like we've totally abandoned our peacekeeper status in the world, and it's hurt us internationally. Like, most of the world is against what's going on in Palestine and Russia and wants to see those conflicts end.
Yeah.
But the U.S. and Israel and Britain and all the colonial countries, the Five Eyes, want to keep them going because our societies were started on genocide of Aboriginal peoples. So that's another, disgusting fact about Canada and Australia and Britain and the U.S. and Israel. But we need to get together and have groups and talk about direct democracy, participatory democracy, where communities are making the decisions, not people we elect, because this elected system is just where we have a point where we have no real democracy. We can elect Coke or Pepsi, and both of them are soft drinks that are killing us.
Yeah.
Making us sick.
That's it.
But so what do people think? Thanks so much. Like Really says, continue our live videos. Thanks. Appreciate your support.
Yeah.
So Anthony comes from the Anarchist tradition, and if you want to know about that, he's the expert on that. I'm kind of a political interested in politics. I've read books like Naomi Klein's Shock Doctrine that talks about neoliberalism, neoconservatism, that's made the rich richer and the poor poorer for the last 50 years. They wanted to try the perfect free market, so when Pinochet did a coup in Chile in '73, the U.S. Ford Foundation paid for young people to come from Chile and learn economics from Milton Friedman. They were the brain behind his brawn, and when they got there, they tortured and disappeared people to put in this harsh economic neoliberal policy called the Washington, D.C. Consensus that they've used the World Bank and International Monetary Fund to get third world countries hooked on. And so we lend them money, but then the money never goes to their companies. They go to the West, and they have to decrease social spending, decrease taxes, privatize and deregulate. And the countries, it just makes the rich richer and the poor poorer, helps the West totally enslave the third world. And if you listen to a book called The Spirit Level, it kind of has the antidote where you do the opposite. And this is what the Nordic countries did. They had a progressive tax system which taxed the rich and corporations more and regulated the corporations so that their middle class and poor people are thriving and they have great social programs. So that's kind of my background. Was there anything you wanted to mention about fascism, how they used to go after the fascists, like Spain, like they fought against Franco in Spain? I think,
Thank you.
George Orwell was there fighting.
Yeah.
And Anthony's a big fan of Orwell. He's a resident expert on Orwell. And anarchism, he knows a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we definitely oppose fascism. That would be the worst. Yeah, I mean, and this is part of what makes right now sort of interesting and threatening is there's been this slide towards a more totalitarian sort of society for a while.
Populism.
Well, yeah, populism, yeah, that's just from the people. So, I mean, there's been good populism in the past, or at least, like, they used to call it progressivism way back. But anymore, it seems to be the right that's farming it up more than us. I don't know, at least it seems to be that way. I mean, look at Bernie. When he had big crowds going, I'd say that was sort of a populism too, right?
He was the progressive on the left, and the Democrats rigged it so that he couldn't...
Yeah. I mean, there's a good chance he would have been the president if they hadn't stepped in and kneecapped him.
100%. They rigged that 10 ways of Sundays. There's a Justice USA report that came out and said that Bernie likely would have won it if they didn't have so much rigging involved and superdelegates. There's if you listen to Ray McGovern, he has a video called Russiagate. Ray McGovern has a video called Russiagate. He was part of 7 CIA administrations in Washington, and he was an expert on Russia. And him, together with Bill Binney, they formed the group called the Veterans for Sanity.
Veterans for Sanity.
Bill Binney was the technical director of the NSA, who has all our emails, and Edward Snowden, he was working for the CIA, and he smuggled out on a little chip in a Rubik's Cube to meet Glenn Greenwald in Hong Kong and tell everybody that, yeah, Americans have been spying on you, just after John Brennan lied that they didn't have all our emails.
Yeah.
So Snowden had to run for his life, and he is a true hero. And he exposed that, they have all our emails. And so Bill Binney says the one email they don't have is from Russian hacking. So anyhow, they just said the download speeds were too slow to be a hack. It was a USB port or a CD. And so it's likely the Russians didn't hack. But anyways, just the way they snowed Bernie, the way they cheated to make him look like he lost, but he likely didn't. The way they lied about Russian hacking, there's no real democracy in the U.S., and there isn't really one in Canada either. We need proportional representation. Or we need to come together in communities and do things like participatory democracy or direct democracy, where we vote in assemblies on what we want to do. We need affordable housing for people, and they're nickel and diming us. All these people, Ford took away rent control, so now everybody and their dogs out in the street because nobody can afford housing. The average person can't afford rent. If you're making minimum wage, you don't have enough money for rent. Seniors don't have enough money. So we're struggling right now, and neither the Liberals or the Conservatives are doing what needs to be done. So what do? Well, I think we have to come together and...
At least in the 1930s, when the Great Depression came on, people organized to fight back.
Oh, we're the epitome of what a MAGA is. Two friends.
People fought back, though. People fought back in the workplace. People fought back in the community. People fought back in large numbers in radical groups. There was 2 socialist parties, a communist party. There were anarchists. There were union organizers popping up all over the place.
Where was this?
In the United States.
Oh, wow.
In the 30s.
In the 30s, okay.
When after the stock market crashed, of course, people were desperate and there was misery. But people also had that back to the wall feeling and started organizing in ways that they really hadn't been in such big numbers before. And this was part of what drove FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, to bring in what's called the New Deal. The New Deal that gave people unemployment and the right to organize in legal unions and all these protections that the society gave to people that we basically have taken for granted for generations, and that made life easier for people who were working class and maybe suffering some of the worst side of capitalism. And so the potential is there for people to do the same now and push for a New Deal.
So we need a second Bill of Rights that Roosevelt was going to bring in. Before he died, he had a second Bill of Rights, and he died before he could do it. But they wanted to give everyone a job and health care. Everybody should be safe. Everybody had rights for liberty and happiness and health, and he was going to enshrine those. And I think one of the ways we should do it is Canada signed the UN Declaration of Human Rights. In fact, it was written in Montreal, and with Article 25, it says housing is a human right. So I think
Are we civilized enough for that, though?
I think we should go to the courts and say, look, we signed this document and said we believe in it. The government's going to pony up? because I think in the 60s we had a program that gave everyone housing, and they canceled it. So whether that was a liberal or conservative government, I'm not sure, but each government has dropped the ball since then.
Yeah.
So we need to take government and hold them to task. If they say, they believe in the rights of the disabled, well, we're not giving the disabled enough to even rent a place.
Right. Like everyone else, they're going under the water.
One of the doctors during the pandemic used to see homeless people, and she made a quote that one of her patients or homeless people said that everybody I know has died. I know more dead people than living people during the pandemic, and it was just horrific. These people are even doing MAID because their life is so difficult and filled with abuse and horror. So it's just disgusting how we're treating the most vulnerable, and I think the only way we're going to fix things is by taking the government to court. That's the long game, but the short game is we have to get together and demand everybody has a job if they want it. Demand everybody to have a basic income so they have enough to survive. Demand that everybody has public health care. Right now, Ford's wants to privatize core hospital services. And for one thing, it's most of these private clinics are charging user fees, which is illegal under the Canada Health Act.
Part of what Roosevelt said he did in his memoirs, written before he eventually died and had to hand off to Truman, he said his greatest accomplishment was saving capitalism. When he got some of these guys together, he told them, look, here's the deal. We got to give them a significant chunk of the pie. Because if we don't, they're going to come and take the whole pie. He knew those unionists, the socialists, the anarchists, the communists were all gaining ground, and that people were headed towards some major shit happening. Whether it would have been a full revolution, who knows? But the threat of it was growing. And Roosevelt was part of a group of people who were smart enough to see it, and they knew they could head it off in certain ways. And they did. And one of those ways was giving people a better slice of the pie. And that's what they did. It was easier to do in the post-war world where America had abundant wealth, unseen wealth for one nation with 5% of the world's population. So it was easier for them to do that strategy, but they just shared the wealth more. Working class people got a better deal. They were able to, they pushed home ownership. Who's gonna join in a revolution when you're paying off a home and raising a family, and you know what I mean? They made the dream, the American dream of owning a home was really a post-war dream. It was in those post-war years when the boys came back from fighting and the next generation, the early boomers, were coming up. Those years were just paved with a way for them to have financial stability and be able to own a home, put their kids in college, all of that. And then you fast forward and that's being pulled out from under us. No, you're not going to own a home. No, you're not sending your kids to college. You're not having any of that. You're going to struggle, and you're going to go without, and you're going to have no future, and your kids are going to probably struggle even worse. And this is what they're offering us and telling us that it's good for us. Here's your lunch. No. My answer is no. I'd rather go down swinging than just take that. And that's, to me, that's what it's about. It's almost like being mugged in an alley. Like, it's too late to talk about what we could have done or should have done to get here. We're here. They are stealing us of our livelihoods, our well-being, the future of our children and grandchildren. If we don't fight, it's only an even more bleak picture coming up.
Rationing our own taxes to us and giving themselves huge raises,
yes.
and selling off our public health care. Like Ford's paying private clinics twice the price as it costs in hospitals
They're
to do a
robbing us.
surgery. And meanwhile, they're donating to him. So if he gets elected again, guess what? They get a bigger piece. And we remember the Greenbelt scandal. A developer went to his wedding and made a donation, and behind back doors, he was going to take land that developer owned out of the Greenbelt. Why would a developer buy land in the Greenbelt? Because it's never going to be able to be developed.
Yeah.
But he knew that Ford was going to do it for him, and Ford got caught. And guess what? He's doing the same thing in the healthcare industry. He's seeing what he can sell off behind closed doors.
This is all part of what Chris Hedges called the kleptocracy. It's like the view of the ruling class is slowly becoming that they see the system is spinning out of control. And for a lot of them, they're just trying to grab what they can, either directly or selling off pieces to big interests. Like what Jeff described Ford has done. He's setting up developers, he's set up landlords, he's set up, all these people in groups, and they do it that way too.
Giving 30-year licenses to nursing homes that were some of the worst in the pandemic, where they had thousands of people die during the pandemic.
People's parents.
He's giving them 30-year licenses with no strings attached, and the Canadian military had to go into one place, and they said it was just horrific, the treatment, during the pandemic. We know the private sector costs more, has more deaths, worse outcomes, less quality, is less regulated. And guess what? If we allow private two-tier healthcare, the big U.S. companies can come in and buy up all our hospitals and our entire healthcare system. And guess what? They're going to make sure people get elected. They keep maintaining the flow of profits to their corporations. So we lose control of our healthcare and we lose control of our democracy, because all this influx of money comes in from their profits to rig the game. So Ford's a dangerous for our democracy. He's going to sell off our public health care. He's privatizing core hospital services. He's the most dangerous extreme right person in Canada, and he needs to be stopped.
Fair enough.
So we've got a big mess. People are dying in the streets because we aren't providing housing for them when it's a human right. We're letting corporations run our governments. They'll be writing legislation like they did before when Harper was in government. He's behind the scenes. He was in London fundraising for genocide. The Jewish National Fund has been, their charity status has been taken away because they were giving money to the Israeli military that's committing a genocide right now. And Harper, a conservative, was there fundraising for them. Like, how horrific is that?
Yeah.
And Harper might be taking over a $180 billion fund in Alberta because they've fired the pension board. And they're thinking about letting him take that over. Do we want an extreme right fascist in control of $180 billion in Alberta? Well, Danielle Smith probably does. So, she's the scariest thing known to man. Like, as far as privatizing healthcare, extreme right ideas, attacking trans kids, more trans people will be committing suicide because of our government policies. So, we really need to band together, get together in communities and decide, that we're going to take back the commons, take back our public assets, try and save money and buy housing for all of us, fight for policies that support housing the homeless. Like, let's stop with all this just funding Band-Aid solutions, shelters and things, and food banks. Let's actually give people food. Let's actually house them. Ford canceled the basic income project because it was working.
Yeah. Because
it helps people. His extreme right-wing ideology doesn't let people have anything for free or have dignity. He was out there telling people that they have to get off their asses and get a job after he took away rent control. And he, but he doesn't realize that homeless people, because they don't have housing, they can't get a job because they don't have an address even to apply for work. But it's not just that. He was saying, if you can't work, we got your back. Well, that's just a bold-faced lie. He doesn't have the back of people that are homeless or having trouble working. He's cutting, legal aid. He's cutting health care. He's cutting things that help people immigrating. He's cutting schools. So just all the things people need to thrive, he's basically trying to cut it.
Yeah.
So we're
no questions today,
anybody have any questions for us? No, we're not MAGA. Like we're far to the left of the NDP, I would say. The NDP aren't the best, but there's, I'm more moderate, so I'm more supportive of the NDP. I don't think they go far enough. I thought it was disgusting what they did to Sarah Jama. And not having a leadership race, but anyhow, they're the best we've got between the neoliberals and the neoconservatives. But like we learned in the Great Divide, there's that the anarchists have the red and the black, right? The red think that they can take over government and they can make it work, and the blacks see that doesn't matter who takes over, they're going to be corrupted. Perhaps.
Yeah, the the red and black flag sort of came from the idea of marrying two tendencies, the sort of socialist thinking at the time, which wasn't always state. There is a tradition of socialist and Marxist thinking that doesn't gravitate around seizing the state. Not all of them do, just that became a dominant part of it, and then once the Russian Revolution happened, most of them gravitated into it, right? Same all the way around. But the black and the red and the black was sort of the early anarchist, sort of insurrectionist side that wanted no part of any organization, let alone a political party, or seizing state power. And when those two sort of came together, that was, I guess, the contemporary anarcho-syndicalists, and it's become their flag. So it's like the anarchist tendency with the idea of being socialist, in broader society. So I don't know. It's become emblematic of that sort of position. Like, you remember the political compass? When I'm doing this as a workshop, I usually show the political compass and show how, there's left and right, but then there's also authoritarian and freedom or liberty. And
libertarian.
You could say, but the Americans have kind of co-opted the term libertarian. So people tend to think of like, the Rands or somebody. The Pauls, or Ayn Rand, or the Pauls. But, is it shutting off on you?
Oh, they just were getting run down a little bit, unable to verify. So we'll just go here and we'll do that.
Okay.
So, anybody have any questions or anything? Or Anthony's the anarchist and I'm the moderate. We just like to discuss political stuff. We just see this as a crisis. We've got a opioid crisis. We've got a healthcare crisis. We've got a war and climate crisis. We've got a mental health crisis. We've got a housing crisis. And all these things are going to get worse by electing conservatives, not better. So that's one thing. And the liberals are more or less the status quo. So I think it's important for us communities to come together and discuss how we're going to solve these problems, because nobody's coming to save us. I think we're the ones who have to save ourselves.
We are the ones we've been waiting for.
Yeah. Okay, folks, I think we're going to wrap it up, because we've just exhausted what we were here to say, and
pretty much for the moment.
So thanks so much for joining us, and hope you get involved and support local groups that support public health care, local groups that are anti-war, anti-fascist, and call out the extreme right for all the garbage they're spreading about the homeless and immigrants, and it's just garbage, and we need immigrants, we need to house people, we need to fight for the most vulnerable more than ever right now. The trans community, we need to support trans people, the LGBTQ.
You're going to be coming for them too.
Spirit. And the First Nations, we support First Nations, because if it wasn't for them when we first got here, we would have starved. If it wasn't for Tecumseh's as a brilliant tactician, we'd be the 52nd state. The Truth and Reconciliation and the missing and murdered Indigenous women and the land back issues, we all support First Nations in fighting and their consent to say no for pipelines going through their land, and we recognize that First Nations, their philosophy, their closeness to the land holds the key to our survival in the future. If we don't embrace the environment and protecting it and being close to the land, we're not going to survive, and we'll take half the species or more with us.
Yep.
Okay,
That's about it.
Cheers.